The Velnoxi had ruled their part of the galaxy for 12,000 years. They were beautiful creatures with thin bodies and wings made of something that looked like living crystal. When light touched their wings, colors danced across the walls. They were smart. They were peaceful. They had never needed to fight because their technology was better than everyone else's. Ambassador Thessaly Ven remembered a time when her people feared nothing. She remembered sitting in the Grand Council chamber as a young diplomat, listening to elder statesmen discuss trade routes and cultural exchanges. War was something other species did. Violence was primitive. The Velnoxi had evolved beyond such things. That was before the harvesters came. No one knew where they came from. They appeared at the edge of Velnoxi space 3 years ago. Their ships black and angular like broken bones floating in the void. They did not send greetings. They did not ask for trade. They simply landed on the outer colony of Tesreth Prime and began taking everything. They took the minerals from the ground. They took the water from the lakes. They took the people. The Velnoxi sent their best diplomats. The harvesters killed them. The Velnoxi sent their defense fleet. The harvesters destroyed it in less than a day. Now, standing in the same Grand Council chamber where she had once felt so safe, Ambassador Ven watched the holographic map turn red. System after system fell to the harvesters. 12 billion Velnoxi citizens were now refugees. 30 billion more waited on worlds that would soon be attacked. "We must do something," said Counselor Marin, his wings flickering with fear. "Our weapons cannot hurt them. Our shields cannot stop them. What options remain?" The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what options remained. There was only one, but speaking it aloud felt like admitting defeat in a different way. Ambassador Ven stepped forward. Her wings trembled, but she forced her voice to stay steady. "We must send a signal to Sector 7G, she said. The reaction was immediate. Gasps filled the chamber. Several counselors stood up in protest. One elderly diplomat actually covered his ears as if the words themselves were dangerous. "The Deathworld sector?" Counselor Marin whispered. "You want to invite those creatures into our space?" "I want our people to survive," Ven replied. "The humans are the only species in the known galaxy who might be able to fight the harvesters." Everyone knew about the humans. They had joined the galactic community 40 years ago, and since then, they had been carefully avoided by every civilized species. Their homeworld, Earth, was a nightmare made real. The gravity was crushing. The temperature swung from freezing to boiling. The atmosphere contained a gas called oxygen that would burn the lungs of most species. Dangerous animals filled every corner of the planet. Diseases evolved constantly to attack the humans. And the humans evolved right back. And somehow, impossibly, humans thrived there. They were not elegant like the Velnoxi. They were dense and heavy, built like living machines. They could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They could heal broken bones. They could lose limbs and continue fighting. They ate plants and animals alike, digesting things that would poison others. They slept for only a third of each day and spent the rest working, building, creating. They were, by every scientific measure, monsters. But they were also the galaxy's only hope. The vote was close. Many counselors would rather die than ask Deathworlders for help. But in the end, fear of extinction won over fear of humanity. The signal was sent, broadcasting on every frequency the humans were known to monitor. 3 days passed. The harvesters conquered 2 more systems. Millions more became refugees. Then, on the morning of the 4th day, something appeared at the edge of Velnoxi space. Ambassador Ven was in her office when the alert came. She rushed to the command center, pushing through crowds of frightened officials. When she reached the main viewing screen, she stopped breathing. The ship was enormous. It dwarfed anything the Velnoxi had ever built. But it was not its size that made her blood run cold. It was the scars. The hull was covered in marks of old battles. Burns from energy weapons. Dents from physical impacts. Patches where holes had been sealed. This ship had fought many times. This ship had survived things that would have destroyed entire Velnoxi fleets. and it was not alone. Behind it, more ships emerged from hyperspace. 10, 20, 40. Each one carried the same scars. Each one had the same look of something that had been through hell and come out the other side. They came, Counselor Marin breathed. They actually came. The main screen flickered. A face appeared. It was a human face, belonging to a female of their species. Her skin was dark brown, her hair was cut short and gray, and her eyes held something that made Ambassador Ven want to look away. This was not the face of a diplomat. This was the face of someone who had seen death many times and no longer feared it. "I am Admiral Miriam Stone of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. Her voice was calm and steady, like deep water that hid dangerous currents. "We received your distress signal." Ambassador Ven stepped forward, hope blooming in her chest for the first time in months. "Admiral Stone, thank you for responding. The Harvester threat grows worse each day. We desperately need your military assistance to stop." The single word cut through the chamber like a blade. Admiral Stone held up one hand, and somehow that simple gesture silenced everyone. "Before we render any assistance," the Admiral continued, "we have questions. We will be conducting an assessment." Ambassador Ven blinked. "An assessment?" "Admiral, with respect, there is time for this." Stone's eyes seemed to look directly at Ven, even through the screen. "We do not fight for anyone who asks. We do not spend human lives without knowing what we are fighting for. Your species will be evaluated. Your civilization will be judged. And then, only then, will we decide if your cause is worth our blood." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. This was not what they expected. They had asked for warriors. They had asked for salvation. Instead, they were being told they had to prove themselves worthy of it. Judged? Counselor Marin stepped forward, his wings flashing with anger. "We are the Valnoxi hegemony. We have ruled this sector for 12,000 years. By what right do you judge us?" Admiral Stone's expression did not change, but something in her eyes grew colder. "By the right of those who will bleed for you," she said simply. "My soldiers will not die for tyrants. They will not die for slavers. They will not die for those who hurt the weak. If you are good people facing an enemy you cannot defeat alone, we will help you. If you are not," she paused, "then you will face the harvesters alone." The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Ambassador Ven stood frozen in place, her wings hanging limp at her sides. Around her, counselors argued and shouted. Some demanded the humans be sent away. Others begged for patience. But Ven heard none of it. She was thinking about all the things the Valnoxi had done over 12,000 years. All the decisions that had seemed small at the time. All the times they had chosen profit over justice, convenience over compassion. The humans were coming to judge them. And suddenly, Ambassador Ven was not sure they would pass. Admiral Stone's shuttle landed in the capital city 3 hours after her announcement. Ambassador Ven stood at the landing pad with a full honor guard, trying to look calm even though her hearts were beating too fast. The shuttle door opened. 12 humans walked out. They wore no armor. They carried no visible weapons. They moved with an easy confidence that made the armed Valnoxi guards look nervous. Each human was different in size and color, but they all shared the same look in their eyes. These were people who had seen terrible things and learned to live with them. Admiral Stone walked at the front. Up close, she was shorter than Ven expected. Humans were not tall by galactic standards. But there was something about the way she stood, the way she held herself, that made her seem larger than her body. Ambassador Ven Stone said, extending her hand. "Thank you for receiving us." Ven had studied human customs. She knew this gesture. She reached out and took Stone's hand, feeling the strength in those dense fingers. "Thank you for coming, Admiral. We have prepared a full tour of our defensive systems. Our military commanders are ready to brief you on that will not be necessary." Stone released her hand. "We are not here to look at your weapons." Ven felt confusion wash over her. "Then what do you wish to see?" Stone turned to the human standing beside her. He was tall and dark-skinned, with kind eyes that seemed out of place on a warrior. Commander David Okonkwo will lead our assessment team, Stone explained. He has prepared a list of locations we wish to visit. Okonkwo stepped forward and handed Ven a data tablet. She looked at the list, and her confusion grew deeper. Refugee camps? Medical facilities? Historical archives? She looked up at the humans. I do not understand. These places have nothing to do with fighting the harvesters. They have everything to do with why we would fight for you, Okonkwo said. His voice was gentle but firm. We want to see how you treat people who cannot help themselves. We want to see what your civilization values. We want to understand who you really are. Over the next 5 days, the humans spread across Velnoxi's space. They did not inspect military bases. They did not study weapon systems. Instead, they visited refugee camps where survivors from conquered worlds lived in temporary shelters. They walked through hospitals where wounded civilians received treatment. They sat in schools and listened to what children were taught. They read historical records and legal documents. Commander Okonkwo spent most of his time in the medical wards. He watched Velnoxi doctors and nurses work around the clock, treating patients from dozens of different species. He asked quiet questions. He took notes in a small book he carried everywhere. On the third day, he found something that made him stop, in a small ward at the back of the largest hospital. A Velnoxi nurse named Tessara was treating a child. The child was not Velnoxi. She was not even from a species that belonged to the hegemony. She was a Kathrani from a world that the Velnoxi had no treaty with, no obligation to protect. The child was dying. Her body was failing from injuries received during a harvester attack. There was little the nurse could do except make her comfortable. Okonkwo watched from the doorway as Tessara worked. The nurse had been on duty for 18 hours. Her wings drooped with exhaustion. Her hands shook from tiredness. But she stayed with the child, holding her small hand, singing soft songs in a language the child could not understand. Why? Okonkwo asked when the child finally fell asleep. Why do you work so hard for someone who is not your people? Someone your government has no duty to help? Tessara looked at him with tired eyes. Because she is suffering. Because I can help, even if only a little. What other reason do I need? Okonkwo wrote something in his book and said nothing more. While the assessment team studied the Velnoxi, Admiral Stone was doing something different. She had requested a secret meeting, away from the eyes of the Council and the public. The location was a small station at the edge of the system. The being who met her there was a harvester. Ambassador Crix was tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes that held no warmth. The harvesters did not feel things the way other species did. They had evolved beyond such weaknesses. They saw the universe as resources to be collected and obstacles to be removed. Admiral Stone, Crix said, making the greeting sound like a threat. I must admit, I did not expect humans to answer the Velnoxi call. I thought your species preferred to stay isolated. But Stone sat across from the harvester, her face showing nothing. We prefer to understand situations before we act. That is why I wanted to speak with you. How practical. Crix leaned forward. Then let me be clear. The Velnoxi are weak. Their civilization is dying. In 10 years, perhaps 20, we will control all their territory, regardless of what happens here. You could fight us and lose thousands of your soldiers, or you could simply step aside. And if we step aside, then we will remember your wisdom. The harvesters reward those who do not oppose us. We could offer you trade agreements, access to resources, technology from the worlds we have conquered. Crix spread his thin hands. The Velnoxi have nothing to offer you. We have everything. Stone was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. You have studied human history, I assume. Of course. Your species is violent but effective. You understand power. Then you know about the times we failed to act. Stone's eyes met the harvesters. You know about the genocides we allowed because we decided they were not our problem. You know about the tyrants we ignored because fighting them was too expensive? She paused. You know about the shame we still carry for those choices. Crix's expression flickered with something that might have been confusion. Shame is inefficient. The past cannot be changed? No, but the future can. Stone stood up. Thank you for your offer, Ambassador. I will consider it. She left the station without looking back. On the 5th day, Commander Okonkwo presented his report to Admiral Stone. They met in a small room on the human flagship. Away from any Velnoxy observers, what did you find? Stone asked. Okonkwo set his notebook on the table. They are not perfect. Their history has dark chapters. They have made selfish choices. They have ignored suffering when it was convenient, and they have also built hospitals for species they have no duty to help. They have taken in refugees from worlds they have no connection to. I watched their people work themselves to exhaustion for strangers. Okonkwo met the Admiral's eyes. When it mattered most, when there was nothing to gain, they chose compassion. That tells me who they really are. Stone nodded slowly. The Harvesters offered us an alliance. Resources, technology, everything the Velnoxy cannot give us. I know. Okonkwo did not look worried. What did you tell them? Admiral Stone smiled. It was a small smile, but real. I told them I would think about it. She picked up the notebook and began to read. Now, let us prepare what we will tell the Council. The Velnoxy have waited long enough to learn their fate. The Grand Council chamber was full. Every seat was taken. Thousands of Velnoxy officials, diplomats, and leaders had gathered to hear humanity's decision. Billions more watched through screens across every world in the hegemony. Ambassador Ven stood near the front, her wings pressed tight against her back. The past 5 days had been the longest of her life. She had watched the humans examine her civilization like scientists studying an insect. She had seen them visit the best of her people and the worst. Now, finally, she would learn what they had decided. The chamber doors opened. Admiral Stone walked in, followed by Commander Okonkwo and the rest of her team. They moved through the silent crowd, took their positions at the speaker's platform. Stone looked out at the sea of frightened faces. She took a breath and began. We have completed our assessment of the Velnoxy hegemony. Before I share our decision, I want to be clear about what we found. She touched a control, and holographic images appeared in the air. Documents, records, evidence. 300 years ago, your government signed a trade agreement with the Kasari people. That agreement gave you access to valuable minerals in exchange for protection. When the Kasari were attacked by raiders, you calculated that defending them would cost more than the minerals were worth. You withdrew your protection. The Kasari lost 4 million people. The chamber was silent. Ven felt her stomach turn. She remembered reading about that incident in history class. It had been presented as a difficult but necessary decision. Stone continued. 150 years ago, your ships discovered a pre-spaceflight civilization on a planet you wanted to colonize. Rather than find another world, you moved your people in anyway. The native species was pushed to the edges of their own planet. Many died from diseases your colonists brought. Your textbooks call this peaceful settlement. We would call it something else. More images appeared. More records. More evidence of choices that had seemed reasonable at the time but looked different under human eyes. 60 years ago, your council voted against providing humanitarian aid to the Tesseron, refugees because their political system was different from yours. 20 years ago, your courts ruled that non-Velnoxy workers did not deserve the same protections as Velnoxy citizens. 10 years ago, your military tested weapons on a world they believed was uninhabited. It was not uninhabited. The species living there had simply not developed radio signals yet. Ven's wings trembled. Around her, counselors shifted uncomfortably. Some looked angry. Some looked ashamed. Many looked afraid. This is your history, Stone said. These are the choices your civilization has made. By these measures, you are not innocent. You are not pure. You have caused suffering to others for your own benefit. She paused. The silence was so complete that Ven could hear her own hearts beating. However, Stone continued, and something in her voice changed. We also found something else. New images appeared. Different images. We found the hospital on Tesseroth Prime, where Velnoxy doctors worked for 3 days without sleep to save survivors from a harvester attack. We found the refugee camp on Velion, for where your people gave their own food to strangers because the supply ships were late. We found the nurse named Tessara, who held the hand of a dying child from a species your government has no treaty with, simply because the child was afraid and alone. Ven felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not heard about these things. They were small moments, ordinary kindness, nothing that would make the history books. We found soldiers who wept while carrying children from burning cities. We found teachers who stayed in dangerous areas to keep schools open. We found ordinary citizens who opened their homes to refugees even when they had barely enough for themselves. Stone's voice grew stronger. We found leaders who admitted their mistakes and tried to do better. We found a civilization that is imperfect, yes. A civilization that has made terrible choices, yes. But also a civilization that is capable of growth, capable of compassion, capable of being better than it was. She looked directly at Ambassador Ven. On Earth, we have a saying. We believe that the true measure of a civilization is not how it treats the powerful. It is how it treats those who cannot fight back. The weak, the helpless, the stranger with nothing to offer. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. By that measure, Stone said, the Velnoxy hegemony is flawed. But it is also worthy. For a moment, no one moved. Then the meaning of the words sank in, and the chamber exploded with sound. Cheers, cries of relief, Velnoxy embracing each other, their wings flashing with joy. But Stone raised her hand, and slowly the noise died down. Our help comes with conditions, she said. Not tribute, not territory, not technology. We ask for something more valuable. Ambassador Ven stepped forward, hope and fear mixed together in her chest. Name your terms, Admiral. Whatever you ask, we will consider it. We require a promise. Stone's eyes swept across the chamber. Right now, you are the ones in need. You are the ones calling for help. But one day, the situation will be different. One day, you will be strong again. And on that day, someone else will send a desperate signal into the void. Someone weaker than you? Someone who has nothing to offer. Someone who can only beg. She paused. When that day comes, you will answer. You will not calculate costs and benefits. You will not ask what you can gain. You will simply help because it is right, because someone once did the same for you. The chamber was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. Not fear, not tension, something deeper. You will become protectors, Stone continued. Not because it is profitable, not because it is easy, but because the galaxy needs more civilizations willing to stand between the weak and those who would harm them. You will take this burden onto your shoulders, and you will carry it for as long as your civilization exists. She leaned forward, and in that moment, every being in the chamber understood something important. This was not a negotiation. This was a test. The humans were offering them a chance to become something greater than they had ever been. Do we have an agreement? Ambassador Ven looked around the chamber. She saw the faces of her people. She saw the fear that had lived in their eyes for 3 years, slowly changing into something else. Something that looked like hope. Something that looked like purpose. She stepped forward and bowed her head. We agree, Admiral Stone. On behalf of the Velnoxy hegemony, I give you our word. When others call for help, we will answer. When the weak need protection, we will provide it. We will become what you have asked us to become. Stone nodded. For the first time since she arrived, something like warmth appeared in her eyes. Then we have an alliance. My fleet will engage the harvesters within 72 hours. Commander Okonkwo will coordinate with your military leaders to plan our strategy. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. One more thing, Ambassador. In our judgment, we found many things wrong with your civilization. But we also found something that made us believe you could change. Do you know what it was? Ven shook her head. Your nurse Tessara. The one who held the dying child's hand? Stone's voice was soft. When we asked her why she worked so hard for a stranger, she said something I will never forget. She said, because she is suffering. Because I can help. What other reason do I need? The Admiral turned away. That is the heart of everything we believe. That is why we answered your call. That is what we hope you will remember when it is your turn to answer someone else's." She walked out of the chamber, leaving 12 billion Velnoxi to think about what kind of civilization they wanted to become. The Harvester fleet gathered at the Velnoxi border like a dark cloud waiting to storm. 400 warships, each one bristling with weapons that had destroyed every enemy they had ever faced. Commander Crix stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. The humans had sent only 40 ships, 40 against 400. Crix had studied human military history. He knew they were resilient fighters. He knew they were clever. But mathematics was mathematics. Even Deathworlders could not overcome 10-to-1 odds. "You're brave," Crix said to his lieutenant. "I will give them that. Foolish, but brave." His lieutenant, a younger harvester named Cess, nodded agreement. "Perhaps they believe their reputation will frighten us. Perhaps they think we will retreat at the sight of them. Then they will learn otherwise." Crix activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, prepare to engage. We will crush these Deathworlders and then finish what we started with the Velnoxi. By this time tomorrow, their civilization will exist only in our records." The Harvester fleet moved forward in perfect formation. They had conquered 60 systems using these tactics. Overwhelming force, perfect coordination, no mercy. Admiral Stone watched them come from the bridge of her flagship, the UES Remembrance. Her crew worked quietly around her, preparing weapons and shields. There was no fear in the room. There was no panic. These were humans who had trained their entire lives for moments like this. "Admiral," said her communications officer, "the Harvesters are hailing us. They want to offer terms of surrender." Stone almost smiled. "Put them through." Crix's face appeared on the main screen. "Admiral Stone, you have courage, I admit. But you must see that this battle is already decided. Surrender now, and we will allow your ships to withdraw. Continue, and we will destroy you all." Stone looked at the Harvester commander for a long moment. "Commander Crix, I have a counter-offer. Withdraw from Velnoxi space. Return what you have taken. Face justice for your crimes. Do this, and no more of your people need to die." Crix's thin lips twisted into something like amusement. "You offer terms to us? With 40 ships against 400? You are either insane or stupid, Admiral." "There is a third option," Stone said calmly. "I am human." She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "All ships execute pattern. Omega. Time to teach these Harvesters what a death world produces." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The human ships did not form battle lines. They did not move in formation. Instead, they scattered in all directions, each vessel moving independently, as if they had no central command at all. The Harvesters were confused. Their tactics relied on facing organized enemies who moved in predictable ways. These humans were chaos in motion. They struck at supply ships. They destroyed communication relays. They appeared behind Harvester formations and vanished before counterattacks could be launched. "What are they doing?" Crix demanded. "They are not fighting like a fleet. They are fighting like wild animals." That was exactly what they were doing. Humans had evolved on a world where cooperation and individual initiative both mattered. They could work together perfectly when needed, but each human was also capable of independent action. Each captain knew the overall goal and was trusted to achieve it. However they saw fit, the Harvester flagship shuddered as a human torpedo found its way through their shields. Then another. Then 3 more. "Where is that ship?" Crix shouted. "Find it and destroy it." "Cannot track them, Commander. They are moving too fast. Their patterns make no sense." Patterns made perfect sense to human minds. They were the patterns of predators who had spent millions of years hunting on a deadly world. Strike fast. Strike hard. Never be where the enemy expects. Commander Okonkwo led the assault on the Harvester flagship. His boarding shuttle punched through the hull like a needle through cloth. 23 human soldiers poured into the enemy ship, moving in pairs, covering each other. Flowing through the corridors like water, the harvesters had never faced an enemy like this. Their soldiers were trained to fight from a distance, using superior technology to destroy threats before they got close. They had never dealt with creatures who could take a wound that should kill them and keep fighting. They had never faced beings who moved faster than their sensors could track, who could see in near darkness, who could hear heartbeats through walls. Okonkwo took 2 hits in the first minute. Energy burns that would have put any harvester soldier into shock. He barely slowed down. His body was already working to seal the wounds, redirect blood flow, keep him functional. "Left corridor," he said to his team. "Bridge is 200 meters ahead. Watch for crossfire positions." The soldiers moved as one, each covering the other. They had trained together for years. They knew each other's movements without needing to speak. When one fell, others were there to pull them forward. When enemies appeared, they were dealt with in seconds. The harvester defenders fell back, step by step, unable to stop the advancing humans. Their weapons hit the humans again and again, but the Deathworlders refused to die. They just kept coming, blood running from wounds that would kill other species. Faces set with determination that looked like madness. 11 minutes after the boarding began. Commander Okonkwo kicked down the door to the bridge. Crix turned to face him. The Harvester commander was wounded, bleeding silver blood from a cut on his head. His eyes showed something new, something his species had not felt in generations. Fear. "How?" Crix whispered. "How can you still be standing? You should be dead." "My soldiers hit you 17 times. Okonkwo stepped forward. He was wounded in 7 places. His uniform was torn and bloody. One arm hung at an angle that suggested broken bones. And yet he stood. And yet his eyes were clear. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our evolution," Okonkwo said. "We survived plagues that killed 90% of our population. We survived ice ages and droughts and predators in every corner of our planet. We learned to take punishment that would destroy others and get back up again." Pointed at the main view screen, where the Harvester fleet was falling apart. Ships were exploding. Command chains were broken. The perfect formation had become chaos. Your command structure is gone. Your supply lines are cut. Half your fleet is running. You can keep fighting and lose everything. Or... Crix looked at the human. He looked at the screen. He saw his life's work crumbling around him. He had believed the Harvesters were the strongest force in the galaxy. He had believed nothing could stop them. He had been wrong. "What are your terms?" he asked, his voice hollow. "You will withdraw from all Velnoxy territory? You will return all prisoners unharmed. You will face justice for the lives you have taken. In exchange, your species will not be destroyed. You will be given a chance to become something better than you are." 40 seconds remained. Crix knew he could refuse. He knew his remaining ships could keep fighting, but he also knew how it would end. The humans were not just winning, they were hunting. And Harvesters had forgotten what it felt like to be prey. "We accept," Crix said. The words tasted like poison. "We surrender," Okonkwo nodded. He touched his communicator. "All ships, cease fire. The enemy has surrendered." "Repeat, the enemy has surrendered." Across the battlefield, weapons went silent. Ships that had been locked in deadly combat pulled apart. The impossible had happened. 40 human vessels had defeated 400 Harvester warships. Okonkwo swayed slightly. The adrenaline was fading and his wounds were catching up with him. But he remained standing. He would remain standing until the job was done. That was what it meant to be from a death world. That was what it meant to be human. Admiral Stone's face appeared on the screen a moment later. She looked at the captured Harvester commander, then at her wounded soldier, and nodded slowly. "Well done, Commander. Get yourself to medical. We have much work to do, and I need you alive to help with what comes next." Okonkwo allowed himself a small smile. "Yes, Admiral. What does come next?" Stone looked at the Harvester fleet, now drifting powerless in space. Her expression was thoughtful. "Now we teach them the same lesson we just taught the Velnoxy. Everyone can be redeemed. Everyone can become better, even our enemies." She paused. "Especially our enemies." 6 months had passed since the Battle of Velnoxy Space, and the galaxy looked very different. Ambassador Ven stood at the window of her new office, watching ships come and go from the orbital station. Some of those ships were Velnoxy, some were human, and some, incredibly, were Harvester. She still found it hard to believe sometimes. The Harvesters, who had conquered 60 systems and killed billions of people, were not destroyed. They were not imprisoned. They were working. Admiral Stone had explained it during their first meeting after the battle. On Earth, she had said, "We learned long ago that destroying your enemies creates more problems than it solves. Their children grow up hating you. Their survivors plot revenge. The cycle of violence continues forever. So what do you do instead?" Ven had asked. "We make them useful. We give them a purpose that does not involve hurting others. We redirect their energy toward building instead of destroying." The Harvesters were efficient. Everyone agreed on that. They had conquered systems because they were excellent at organizing, at planning, at executing complex tasks. These skills did not have to be used for war. They could be used for reconstruction. Now Harvester work crews were rebuilding the cities they had destroyed. Harvester engineers were repairing the infrastructure they had broken. Harvester doctors were treating the people they had wounded. It was not punishment. It was, as Admiral Stone called it, redemption through service. Not all Harvesters accepted this path. Some fled into the outer reaches of space. Some refused to work and were confined until they changed their minds. But many, perhaps most, seemed almost relieved. Commander Crix himself had admitted in a rare moment of honesty that his species had grown tired of endless conquest. "We did not know what else to do," he had said. "We had forgotten there were other ways to live." "Your admiral reminded us." Ven's door opened, and a young aide entered. "Ambassador, the ceremony is about to begin. They are waiting for you." She nodded and turned from the window. Today was an important day. Today, the Galactic Protectorate would officially come into existence. The ceremony was held in the same Grand Council chamber where Admiral Stone had delivered her judgment 6 months ago. But the room felt different now. The fear was gone. In its place was something that felt like hope. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats. Velnoxy sat beside Kesari. Tesserans shared tables with the small, quiet beings from the world the Velnoxy had once colonized without permission. Even a delegation of Harvesters stood at the back, their gray faces unreadable, but their presence meaningful. Ambassador Ven walked to the podium. Billions were watching across the galaxy. She had prepared a speech, but standing here, looking at all these different faces, she found she did not need it. 6 months ago, she began, we sent a desperate signal into the darkness. We begged for help. We expected warriors to answer. Instead, we received something far more valuable. She looked toward the gallery where Admiral Stone sat with her officers. The human admiral had refused every honor the council tried to give her. No statues, no titles, no parades. She had asked for only one thing, that the Velnoxy keep their promise. The humans taught us that strength is not just the ability to defeat your enemies. True strength is the ability to help those who cannot help themselves. True strength is answering the call when someone weaker reaches out, even when there is nothing to gain. She touched a control, and the symbol of the new Galactic Protectorate appeared above her. It was a simple design, a hand reaching down to lift another hand up. Today, we create something new. The Galactic Protectorate is not a military alliance. It is not a trade agreement. It is a promise. Every species that joins agrees to answer when others call for help. Every member pledges to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Every world that signs this charter commits to being better than they were before. She paused. We, the Velnoxy, were the first to need help. We will not be the last to give it. This is our word. This is our promise. This is what we have learned from the Deathworlders who came to judge us and found us worthy. The chamber erupted in applause. Species that had been enemies for generations stood and cheered together. Something was changing in the galaxy. Something that had been broken for too long was beginning to heal. After the ceremony, Admiral Stone found a quiet corner of the station and stood looking out at the stars. Commander Okonkwo found her there, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "Quite a day," he said, handing her one of the cups. Stone took it and nodded. "They did well. Better than I expected." "You expected them to fail?" "I expected them to struggle. Change is hard. Keeping promises is hard." She sipped her coffee. "But they surprised me. The nurse, Tessara, she's now running a network of medical stations across 6 systems. The soldiers who carried children from burning cities have become teachers. They're living up to what we asked of them." Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. "Do you think the harvesters will really change?" Stone considered the question. "Some will. Some will not. That is how it always works with people. You cannot force someone to be good. You can only show them that being good is possible and hope they choose it." "That sounds like a lot of faith to put in beings who killed billions." "It is." Stone looked at her officer. "But we come from a planet that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We survived because we learned to work together, even with those we did not trust. We evolved to give people chances because cooperation was the only way to beat a world that wanted us dead." She turned back to the window. "The harvesters were what they were because no one ever showed them another way. Now someone has. What they do with that knowledge is their choice. But at least they have the choice." A new light appeared among the stars. It was faint at first, then grew brighter. A ship was approaching the station. Its design was unfamiliar, something no one in the Protectorate had ever seen before. Stone and Okonkwo exchanged looks. "Are we expecting anyone?" Okonkwo asked. "No." Stone straightened up, her relaxation gone, replaced by the alertness of a commander sensing something important. "But I think we might be receiving someone anyway." The unknown ship drew closer. It was small, clearly not a warship. As it approached the docking area, a message came through on the emergency frequency. The translator took a moment to parse the language. It was old, very old. A language that had not been heard in this part of space for centuries. "Please help us," the voice said. "We are the Tyranni. Our world has been attacked by forces we cannot fight. Our people are dying. We have nowhere else to turn. Please, if anyone can hear this, please help us." Stone looked at Okonkwo. He looked back at her. Neither of them smiled, but something passed between them. An understanding. "Well, Commander," Stone said, "it seems the Protectorate is about to receive its first test. Should we wake the Council?" "Alert the Velnoxi." Stone shook her head. "No need. This is what they signed up for." She activated her communicator. "Ambassador Ven, we have received a distress call. Unknown species called the Tyranni. Their world is under attack." There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then Ven's voice came through, strong and clear.
"Ow."
"I am already assembling a relief fleet. The Velnoxi will answer. The Protectorate will respond." Stone allowed herself a small smile. "Understood, Ambassador. We will coordinate from here." She cut the communication and looked out at the stars once more. Somewhere out there, a species she had never heard of was calling for help. They had nothing to offer. They had no leverage, no bargaining chips, no resources to trade. They were simply suffering and hoping someone would care. 6 months ago, the Velnoxi had been in the same position. Now they were the ones answering. This was what humanity had fought for. Not territory, not power, not revenge. They had fought to create a galaxy where the weak were protected, where mercy was valued, where the call for help would never go unanswered. The Tyranni ship docked at the station. Somewhere, relief fleets were being prepared. Somewhere, species that had been enemies were working together to help strangers they had never met. Admiral Stone finished her coffee and headed for the command center. There was work to do. There was always work to do, but for the first time in a long time, it was good work. It was work worth doing. And as she walked through the corridors of the station, past Velnoxi and humans, and even harvesters working side by side, she felt something she rarely allowed herself to feel. Hope. The Deathworlders had come to judge. They had stayed to teach, and the galaxy, slowly but surely, was learning.